If there's one thing that I've always struggled with, it's wildlife photography. In fact, on multiple occasions, people have said to me, Ben, you have no natural ability for this whatsoever. Just quit. But what if I were paired up with some of the finest gear available today? Then maybe, just maybe, I could prove my work colleagues wrong. And that's exactly what this video is all about. Over the next 3 days, I'm going to be going out with the Nikon Z8 and the 180 to 600mm lens. And I'm going to see exactly how many great images I can capture with it. This journey begins in Avalon Marshes, Somerset, but who knows where it's going to take me? Probably home. So join me on this adventure. Well, I mean, I say adventure, it's basically a middle-aged bloke going out with a camera for a couple of days, but at this point, I'll take whatever I can get. In fact, I think I'm going to have a bit of a chill before we set out. Have a bit of a sit down. Whoa. But my chill would have to wait as I notice my first subject of the day. A duck that, despite its nonchalant attitude toward my presence, disappeared just as quickly as it had appeared. Not only did I scare it off, but I didn't even consider to take photos when it was off on flight. Stupid boy. Which leads me to rule number 1. Always be ready. On the way to my first location, I encountered several other creatures, such as this stationary cow, which seemed to be mocking me to its bovine friends, or the back of this deer-type beast, which was not in the least bothered by my presence. Slim pickings, but I was hoping for better luck as I arrived at my destination. Ooh, bit of a jolly for you though, isn't it, Ben? Going out and doing these videos. Hey, good laugh, isn't they? Yeah. The worst part is I had to go through that, set the camera up, go back through it to come back, and then I've got to go back through this again when I get back out. So now the camera and the lens have been out for quite some time at this point, so I'm sure any of you who have already been interested in them are well aware of many of the specs, but I'm going to go through some of the key features anyway. The Z8 has a 45.7 megapixel full frame stack sensor, 6 stops of inbuilt image stabilization, an XP7 processor, 493 AF points, and of course we've got animal recognition, all of which is going to be incredibly useful. I'm sure I'm going to be using the bird recognition setting a lot today. The lens has 5.5 stops of vibration reduction. You've of course got this versatile focal length, and something that I'm particularly fond of is the internal zoom mechanism, which just makes balance so much easier. I think it's got a 70-degree, what's it called? Not flow, throw, 70-degree throw. That's it, yeah. Very easy to go from 180 to 600, just like that, just like that, just like that. Bit Tommy Cooper. I've also got a CF Express card installed, plus 20 frames per second to play with. So I think it's fair to say if I don't get anything, it's on me, not the camera. Something that has been slowing me down quite a lot is actually trying to set up this camera as well. So I'm going to move over to a GoPro now, get it mounted on here, and yeah, we'll see what we can get. I finally reached my first destination and was horrified to find that there was virtually nothing there. A few swans joined me, but nothing else, which leads me on to rule number 2. Know your subject. By which I mean know where your subjects dwell, what time of day they're most likely to be active. Basically do some kind of research rather than just showing up at midday like I did and hope for the best. Nothing here. Goodbye, tiny temporary home. Okay, so I spent a long time there. I was there for about 90 minutes and really nothing happened at all. Now I'm getting quite conscious of the fact that it's, it's about 1:30 in the afternoon now, and I've got to be out of here by 5. I've wasted a lot of time. I guess that's the first hurdle there. I should have been researching exactly what's in this area and what their habits are when they come out, what they do, that type of thing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing going on around here at all. Quite disappointing. With the day fast leaving me behind, my mood was beginning to sour. A lack of preparation, and let's be frank about this, common sense, ensured that I had a lack of subjects and terrible lighting conditions in which to capture them. But then, just as I was about to abandon everything, I finally managed to get a few decent shots. I personally like these ones here. I don't know what species this is, but I'm going to call him Jim. He looks like a Jim to me, don't you think? Whoa, Jim, calm down. So my time at the Avalon Marshes has come to a close. I got a couple of decent images, nothing that I was blown away by. But I have this set up for the next couple of days, and I've got a couple of other locations that I want to visit over those days. So I'm still confident that I'm going to get something good. So just keep watching the video. Rule number 3, be where the wild things be. By which I mean put yourself in situations where you're definitely going to find wildlife, such as zoos or wildlife parks, etc. You're not going to get any better if you don't have anything to take photos of. So it's the... Blimey. So it is the next day and I've decided to come to Slimbridge Wetland Centre because I'm guaranteed to get some good images here. And I guess that's part of this next tip, is to be able to practice, is to make sure that you're in a place where you know you're going to be able to get something. So going to a zoo, going to places like this, it's a great way to get your chops up, because if you're not practicing, you're not going to be getting any good. Pretty obvious. Learning from yesterday's mistakes, I cautiously began capturing images. I was much more conscious of shutter speed, subject separation and exposure, and it showed in the photos. If nothing else, I was able to highlight the fantastic resolution that the Z8 is capable of. Now that I was starting to get better images of these static subjects, I felt more comfortable moving on to something a little more taxing. So I've managed to find myself a quiet spot, hence why I'm stood like this, don't know why. There were a lot of things that I've learned since the last time I went out shooting with this. I've done a bit of research. One thing that I was really struggling with was focusing on birds amongst the trees. I'm sure you've all had that experience. You're trying to focus on it and then the twigs and branches are getting in the way, and then next minute you know you're focusing on those. So I'm going to have a go at manual focus today, see if that does any... Well, it has done a lot better. I've actually already got some decent images with it, so I'm very happy with that. I'm also shooting in JPEG and RAW today. I was only shooting JPEG the other day, which was stupid of me. So that's going to give me more dynamic range. A lot of the time when I'm taking these shots, I'm, shooting right up at the sky. So you're going to have the high, the real contrast of the bright sky, and the bird is more than likely going to be dark in shadow. So to bring those shadow into the light, I'm now shooting in RAW, which is going to give me that much more dynamic range to work with in post. That was quite beautiful. Not only do you have to learn the habits of what it is that you're taking photos of, but you have to learn to use the actual equipment that you've got as well. I know this is all common sense stuff, but that doesn't really always occur to me. Which brings me on to rule number 4, know thyself. By which I mean know how to use the equipment that you're using, which I just implied in the clip that you literally just watched. The bird recognition and tracking on this is just crazy. It's pretty much doing all the work for me, really. Which was just as well, as I found myself with faster flying targets than ever before. Slowly but surely, I found myself getting more comfortable with what I was doing and starting to get better shots. They weren't as sharp as I would have liked, but the subjects were still at quite a distance, even taking into account the 600mm side of the lens and the fact that I was able to crop into the image significantly. I was starting to get there, but there was still a lot to learn. I think my time at Slimbridge is done. Tomorrow I've got another location in mind. It's a place that I normally do a lot of hiking on. I don't really take a camera with me, but I am aware of a lot of the wildlife that's there. So yeah, I think I'm going to try that tomorrow, see what I can come up with. Should be fun. I've enjoyed this a lot. I've been genuinely learning a lot. This is fantastic. Now that I was getting more comfortable with the camera and the birds, it was time to see what I could do out in the wild. Which brings me to the final rule. Use what you have learned. I was going to do a Yoda reference here about unlearning what you have learned, but that made less and less sense the more I thought about it. Okay, so it's my last day with this setup. As you might be able to tell, it's very, very windy today, so I don't know what I'm going to get. Trying to cover the mic as best I can. I apologise for the noise. I'm both more confident and less confident today than I have been all week. I know more now than I did when I started. I've done a lot of research. But today I'm actually out in the proper wilds. I'm up on Cleve Hill in the Cotswolds, and I'm hoping to just get some wildlife. It's one thing to be able to go to a nature reserve or a zoo or whatever, but yeah, I'm actually out in the wild, so to speak, and I want to see what I can get. A couple of extra tips that I found out last night while doing some research while trying to get birds in flight. It's best to have your back to the wind, because birds take off into the wind. Sounds pretty obvious, but it's something I never really thought about. I've learned a lot over the last couple of days. I'm hoping that I can apply it into this last little stretch. Let's see what we can get. I scoured the hill for rabbits but couldn't find anything. The birds were all tiny, small and hidden, also very difficult to catch in flight due to their speed. The wind was very strong and the clouds were covering any sunlight. Time was running out and things were not looking good. So I've been in this area now for about 90 minutes, absolutely zero rabbits. There are so many people around, it's just, I don't know if they're just hiding away, I wouldn't blame them. But I have been getting a bit of luck with some more birds. I wish I knew what they were. That's my next step in this evolution of learning wildlife photography, is actually learning what it is that I'm actually shooting. But there has been quite a bit of activity in the area with tiny birds though, so it's so difficult to get a decent shot of them. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to do that now, and afterwards I'm going to drop down into some woodland to see if I can get any squirrels or anything like that. It's very, very windy today as well, which doesn't help. Well, it doesn't help me anyway. And then, just as I was about to give up, it appeared. A red kite, or so I was later informed by work colleague, birding enthusiast and Clifton Cameras optics expert Martin Drew. The first shots I got were underexposed due to heavy clouds and required heavy editing to bring out the details. The bird was still too far away for me to get a really sharp shot, but now that I had a real subject, I was determined to stick with it. Many more failed attempts ensued, but just when I was about to call it a day, the clouds parted for a brief moment and the bird got that little bit closer, allowing me to capture these final images. For the first time since I started filming this video, I felt like I was getting a handle on what I was doing and had hope for the future. My journey into wildlife photography is just beginning, but I now had more confidence and was sure that I had the potential to progress. And there you have it. My time with the Nikon Z8 in 180 to 600mm lens has very sadly come to an end. I've enjoyed using this immensely. I've learned a huge amount over the past 3 days. And I just hope that I get a chance to use this again. I've had a great time with this. I've learned a huge amount, and obviously there's only so much that you can learn in that time. So, does this make you a better wild photographer? Yes and no. Now, obviously the main thing is getting out there and practicing, learning the craft, but this camera has helped me out immensely. The Z8 itself, the autofocusing, the animal recognition, the bird recognition especially, has proved incredibly useful, invaluable in fact. The lens itself, this throw distance, this minimal throw distance has proved to be very good as well. It's just been so easy to just zoom in and out easily. You've got the function buttons, which you can set up to however you like. You've got the autofocus limiter here as well, which doesn't focus below 6 meters. That can be incredibly useful in certain situations as well. So that's the camera, but what have I actually learned about wildlife photography? Well, the first thing I've learned is to be patient. I have suffered with this immensely throughout my life in many areas. Being patient, just waiting for the opportunity to turn up. I found myself on more than a few times over the last 3 days getting very frustrated, just sat there waiting for something to happen and not happening, or if it did, I missed it because I was elsewhere in my thoughts. So being patient is a huge one to learn, for me especially. Whatever camera you're using, learning it is incredibly important. You want to be able to dial in those settings as quickly as possible, ideally without taking your eyes away from the viewfinder so that you don't miss out on anything. Luckily, I've been a Nikon user for many years, so getting used to this system was not a problem for me at all. I was pretty much on board with it within a couple of hours, to be honest with you. The autofocus I've already talked about is immensely important. However, the manual focus on this is just so buttery smooth and easy to use. There were many times where I was photographing a bird nestled within the trees and the autofocus was struggling with it a little. It was bouncing off the twigs and going between the bird and the twigs sort of thing. So being able to actually switch over to manual focus with ease and just dial that in very quickly made it easier to get some of those shots. This last part of the video has been a little frustrating for me because I've been left to the whims of the wild, as it were. I've just come out and tried to photograph what I can get. However, I was able to get a lot more because of the practice that I got in at the nature reserve and at the Slimbridge Wetlands Centre. So being able to go to places where you know you're going to actually be able to get subjects and get some photographs in is obviously a very, very key thing to do. Now, all of these are things that the camera can't do, because the last thing is actually learning about nature itself. There's so many simple things that I never even considered. The fact that birds take off into the wind, such an obvious thing, never really occurred to me until I actually looked into it. There have been a couple of times earlier on today where I saw a bird perched up on a tree, and I was able to think, I know exactly which direction now it's going to be taking off in. So I was able to somewhat predict when to take some of the shots, which took, which made things a lot easier. Ultimately, a setup like this cannot do the work for you. You have to put in thousands of hours of time to get really great at this craft. But there is absolutely no denying that this has helped me immensely over the last 3 days, and I would love to go out with it again. Now, I'm very happy with some of the images that I have managed to get over the past couple of days, and there's no denying I have learnt a ton. I know a lot more now than I did 3 days ago, and that's the key. I'm going to keep on learning. So I'm hoping that you guys are going to join me on this journey, because wildlife photography is something that I'm really starting to enjoy. So I'm hoping that you will join me in the future to see how I progress, and hopefully be able to teach you guys a few things along the way as well. I have absolutely no doubt that there's some seasoned pros out there who've watched this, so if you do have any tips for me, then please leave them in the comment section below. And also, if you have learned anything from this video along with me, then leave a comment about that as well, because it really helps me to keep my job. If you have made it this far into the video and you've enjoyed it, learned anything, or quite frankly just enjoyed having a good laugh at my expense, then consider dropping a like, because it really does help to boost the video. And make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future Clifton Cameras content, and follow my journey as I get more and more into wildlife photography throughout the years. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. I never know what to do on this bit here, you know what I mean? Do I just let it fade out, or just...